So what we're going to talk about today is going to be, I think, a very fun episode. And a lot of our deep dives, we've focused on things like debugging or taking a more introspective look of RSpec and testing. And then on Tuesday, we talked about some more practical things in terms of building up your portfolio and the things you should put in it. And today, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about some application development kind of specialties. Specifically, we're going to talk about how you can add a tool such as Omniauth into your application. We're going to build a full application that has Omniauth, and for example, we're going to connect to Facebook. So I'm going to show you how you can integrate that into your application so that you can actually let your users log in and create their accounts via Facebook. So before we jump into the code, I want to give a short little description on what we're going to be doing and compare it with other types of authentication. So normally with authentication, if you're building a Rails app and you're using something like Devise, you have your application right here. When a user comes in and they start a session, whether they just sign in or whether they sign up, everything still resides inside of the application. So say they come here to the sign up page, they'll type in their information. If everything's good and it passes the validation check, then they'll be redirected to another page, like their profile page, an admin page, something like that. Here what we have is a much different scenario than what we're going to be doing with Omniauth. So what Omniauth is it's an attempt at a universal authentication system, which means that you don't always have to build your own authentication. You can also integrate other providers. So you could integrate Facebook, you could integrate GitHub, you could integrate LinkedIn, Twitter, all kinds of different authentication options that you can use as opposed to simply using Devise. What I'll usually do is give the option to do both. I'll usually implement some in-house authentication using Devise or building it from scratch, and then I'll add on some layers. So if a user, and I know this is a case for me, there's many times when I'm signing up for a service, I don't want to go type in my username, my password, I don't want to go and upload my avatar, things like that. If I could use Omniauth, then I don't have to do that. So with Omniauth, what happens is the user comes to the site and they come to your sign-in page. But instead of when they type in their information, instead of them going and being redirected, they're actually going to be redirected to another page. They're going to be redirected to whoever that other provider is. So for the example we're going to be doing, we're going to redirect them to Facebook. And then Facebook is going to perform that authentication. So Facebook is going to check and see, and you have to give permission. So you're going to say, yes, I want to give my permission that this application can access my account. And then after that, then they'll be redirected. Now, once inside the application, this actually has some really cool benefits because not only are they getting access to the application, that's only half of it, we're also able to then get all of their pertinent information. So what we can do when this process occurs, there are some other things that happen right here, such as being able to save this to the database. If I can spell database correctly. So we have right here the process where this record now can come and reside in the database. So if I sign in and I give my Facebook permission, then there is going to be a record of my email and any other information that I allow them to have inside of that new application database. Then from there, it also does things such as starts the session. So just like we have a regular session kind of process when we use Devise, we'll have the same thing when we use Omniauth. So that's what we're going to do. And now that you kind of have a basic idea, let's jump into the code. And as always, I am going to keep this. Oh, awesome. Yes, the audio is much better this time. We've been practicing quite a bit on it, and we actually have another meeting after this with Livestream to keep on trying to improve it. As always, I'm going to keep the Slack channel up, and I'll be checking it throughout the time. If anything urgent comes up, such as no audio or anything like that, make sure you tag my name, and then we will then I'll know about it right away instead of having to wait on it. So to start off, I created a GitHub repo where you'll find everything, and I'm going to paste the link so that all of you guys can have it. And right here we have a very basic Rails 5 application that I already did all this work on, but we're going to create another one just so we can follow the whole process. So let's see the instructions, and you can follow along, or you can simply watch and then follow along later on your own time, just because I probably going to be going very quickly through all of this. So let's come here. I'm going to start up a new terminal session and say Rails new, and I can call this anything I want. I'll say class demo. I'm going to do -t for no tests, and then I want my database to be PostgreSQL. And then from there, just go through all of the normal things that you do for creating an application. So here it's going to generate the app, and then once all that's done, then I'm going to change into it. If I can remember what I called it. Let's see, this is class demo, yes. Once inside, I'll run Rails DB create, and then Rails DB migrate. And then I'm also going to create a couple other things. I'm just going to create a page, a home page, and then I'm going to implement devise. So to do that, I'm going to use a controller generator. So I'm going to say Rails G controller pages, and I'm only going to do one, just something that so that we can have a home page. And after that's generated, I'm going to open up the routes and change that. For this demo, I'm using Vim, but as always, I'm just using this just so I'm not switching back and forth between something like Sublime Text or anything. You could use Sublime or anything else that you want to use. So I'm going to set the root home page to pages home. And if we want to test this out, we can start up a new server session and go check it out in the browser. Coming here, we have pages home, so good. Everything is good here. Now we have to implement devise. To do that, I'll just open up the devise documentation. I'm going to do it right here. And it has a very easy installation process. Remember, we add our gem here. So I'm going to open up the gem file, and I'll just add it at the bottom. Run bundle install, and that will be installing. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually install a devise. So from here, I can run Rails generate devise install, and that's going to go through the whole process. We don't have to really worry about these. This is number one is for setting email options, which we don't care about for this particular guide. We already set a home page. I'm not going to worry about the alerts right now, or maybe I will. Let me just do this really quick. I'll do Vim use layouts, application layout, just so we have them and we can see these. So we can see these items. There we go. So that's just going to show us our alerts. So no questions so far. We've already gone through and done this a number of times, so installing devise probably is going to be second nature to you now. So now that we have all of that, now we just have to create an actual model. And if you remember, this is the command for creating a model. So we're going to do Rails generate devise. I'm going to call it user. And then after this is done, I'm going to run bundle exec rake db migrate. And that's going to generate our user model for us. And that's all we need to do. on the devise side. So the way this is going to work is we're going to have authentication, but we're also going to have Facebook authentication that sits on top of that. So all of that is good. And next thing is we're going to link a Facebook developer account. So if you go to developers.facebook.com here, on the top right hand side, if you don't already have a developer account, you'll have to create one. But if you already have one, then you can come and just click on add a new app and give whatever name you want. So I'm going to say classroom-demo, pick a category for it. This is just going to be for education, and then create an app ID. And it's going to really put my eyes to the test here. Let's see, I believe that's correct. And then if that all works, then that will create a app ID for us. There we go. So now all you have to do is come, I believe it's to dashboard. Yes, so come to dashboard. I'm going to, as soon as this video is done, I'm going to have to come and delete this account because I don't want anyone that would ever see it to have access to my app ID and my app secret. Those are things that they're called secret for a reason. So just know if you try to use mine, I will have it deleted for anyone watching this in the future. So next thing we have to do is add our Omniauth gem to the gem file. So I'm going to copy this, and let's open up the gem file, and right below devise, I'm going to put Omniauth-Facebook. Now this is where this gets a little bit different if you're using Twitter or GitHub or anything. The only difference is the name would change. For this one, I'm going to use Omniauth Facebook and then run bundle install. And following down, the next thing we need to do, if you remember how I told you how we were going to have the ability to, whenever a user is saved or a user logs in, they're going to be saved in the database. In order for this to work, we need to update our user database table. So we need to have a few more parameters. We need a provider, a UID, which these are both just some ways of being able to distinguish that it's a user who came from Facebook, and then what their user ID is on Facebook. Then we also want to have the user's name and then an image. Now each provider is a little bit different. Facebook has these parameters, and you'll see how these tie into the system later on. So I'm going to run that, and as soon as that's done, then I'm going to run Rails DB migrate. And if you're wondering why I used Rails DB migrate this time and bundle exec rake DB migrate last time, it's just because I'm so used to doing it the other way. It's a habit. But with Rails 5, you can just run Rails DB migrate, and that should work for you. I like it. It's shorter. Okay, so now it's good. If you look at the schema file now, you can see that we now have our regular users table, but we also have our other parameters. So we have provider, UID, name, and image. So that should all be good to go. We shouldn't have to make any other changes on that side. And now what we have to do is update our initializer. Remember, an initializer is a file that gets run before the application server starts so that it can load up all kinds of special parameters. So here what it's going to do is this is going to be our API connector. So it's configuring Omniauth to work with Facebook, and it's going to pass in our parameters. Now in a production application, you would put these inside of a like a .env file or in your secrets. Just for right now, for this demo application, I'm just going to put them right in the initializer. Let's see, I'm going to do app, and then let's see, we're going to go, oh sorry, config, initializers, and that's the devise initializer, I believe, yes. And towards the bottom of the file, I'm just going to paste this in. Now what you'll have to do is in your app ID spot here, and in your app secret, that's where you're going to put these items. So for my app ID, it's going to be this right here. And then for my secret, I'm having a little slowdown issue here. Looks like Vim is freezing, or the terminal's freezing up on me. I'm going to have to terminate it and start it up again. Okay, there we go. That happens on here. Whenever I'm screencasting, the computer starts burning pretty hot. Okay, now we're back. So config, initializers, devise, come down here, and this is where I'm going to paste this Omniauth configuration item. And now I'm just going to replace the app ID and the secret. So here, let's get rid of that. Replace it with the app ID from your dashboard. And I'm just having some serious memory issues here. I don't know why it's not playing nicely. Just keeps on freezing on me. I will have to switch to Sublime for some reason. Classroom. Okay. So now I'll open up the config initializers, devise initializer, and now I'll add it in, and it won't freeze, hopefully. If this freezes, then I'm just having a really bad day. Okay, so that's there, and now we can finally grab our app ID. And I'll zoom in on this so it's a little bit easier for you to see too. And my secret. I have to type this in. Just to pick up where I left off, because I'm not sure exactly where the last one stopped, what I've done is I've pasted this config.omniauth call inside of the devise initializer. And here I have it pointed to Facebook with the app ID and my secret here. So the way to think about this, if you've never worked with an API with authentication before, is your app ID is kind of like your username, and then your secret is kind of like your password. So your app ID is perfectly fine to be public, just like your email address is perfectly fine to be public, whereas your secret is like your password. It's nothing that you should ever give out. It is something that needs to be protected. Like I said, as soon as the video is over, I'm going to have to go and delete that other application so that that secret's not available to the public. Now here, the callback URL, this is like the address that we are pointing Facebook to. So Facebook has to know where they are going to be sending users when the authentication goes through. So they're not going to know, where in the world to send a user after the user has clicked OK. So this is a very important thing. And this one is local, so I have it at localhost. But say it was DevCamp, it'd be devcamp.com. And then here, users is the path, and then auth is the extension on the path. And then Facebook, this is where we're letting the system know that this is going to be directed to Facebook. If you had an application where you needed Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and a number of other ones, then this would be different for each specific callback. And yeah, let me know if you can see that a little bit better. And also, all of this code right here, except for the app ID and the password, all of this is available on the README that I sent you the link to. Okay, so if everything is good there, we'll continue down the line. And next I'm going to go into where we're going to update the model. So in order to update the model, what we need to do is tell Devise that this Devise model is omni-authenable, which means that we want the ability to give this model the permission to be an OmniAuth model. And then we also list out who the providers are. So here we have Facebook. This is also if you had a list of them. Notice how it's an array. That means that you can pass in multiple items here as a collection. So I'm going to take this and then open up our user model and just paste this in, and this is how you would pass in, and I'm going to put on a different line. This is how you will let the user model know to accept the OmniAuth approach. So all good on there, no questions at the moment. I'm going to keep on going down the line. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to update our link, or we're going to add in a link to Facebook. So let me put this in and then I'll walk through exactly what it does. So here on the home page, I'm going to get rid of this little paragraph tag and I'll say home page. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying unless current user, which means if there's no user signed in, I could also do if no user, but this is one of the very few times that I use unless for. So I say unless the current user is there, then I want you to show the link that says sign in with Facebook. And then else, which means, in other words, if there is a current user, then I want you to show the logout link. Now this path right here, we haven't created this yet, so we're going to have to implement this in the routes. But what this is user underscore Facebook underscore OmniAuth underscore authorize path. So this is a path that is a Rails helper that will be provided to us by Devise, and this is going to be one that speaks specifically to the route that we'll set up for OmniAuth for Facebook. Moving down the line, we will update our routes. So the next thing is we have Devise for users there by default, but we need the ability to have a Omniauth callback. So what this is going to do is, if you remember back here, we need this callback URL to be created. So that's what this is going to do in our routes. So instead of just Devise for users, I'm going to put Devise users and then say that we have a special controller that we're going to create called Omniauth Callback. And this is what's going to manage the process that occurs when the user is sent back to us. So it's one thing to do like what we're doing right here. Right here we're just saying send the user to Facebook and let them make a decision on if they want to sign in with Facebook and give permissions. Now what we do here is we have to have a way of receiving that callback. So as soon as the user returns to us, Facebook is going to send all kinds of data back to us, like their email address and their picture and all kinds of cool stuff. And we need the ability to be able to accept this. So that is the next step, is creating this specific route and adding on this controller. Moving down the line, we're going to create a controller called users. Now this part's optional in terms of creating a new controller, or I'm sorry, a new directory. I like to do it just from a code organization standpoint. If you choose not to use users, then you have to update your callback route. So notice how I said users / that's because users is going to be a directory that I already planned for. So here I'm going to do that. And next we're going to create this file, this controller file inside of this users controller directory. And inside of this, I'm going to put all this code in. Do not worry, we're going to go through every line of it so that it makes sense. So here I'm created a class. Now notice how this class is called users, but it's connected to, or it's because it's in the users directory, it has the add-on here of Omniauth Callbacks controller, and notice what it inherits from. And also, this could be called anything, or I'm just calling it this because that's what we set up in the routes, and this is the best practice. But the important thing is what it inherits from. So we're going to get a lot of behavior for free because it inherits from the Devise Omniauth Callbacks controller. And this has all kinds of neat methods, like it is the ability where we can handle the requests, and we can have things like persisted and all kinds of cool stuff like that. So this is the first one we're going to do, which is Facebook. If you had other items, so if you had Twitter and you had GitHub, this is also where you would put those different methods. So every one of these is going to take its own method, and if you remember back to our route here, notice how we had user, Facebook, Omniauth. This is going to be the reasons because we have an action here called Facebook. So what we're doing here, first thing, is we are creating a user that we're storing inside of an instance variable called user. And here we are calling from Omniauth. Now this is a method we've not created yet, so we're going to have to create this afterwards. And inside of this, Omniauth is going to take a single argument, which is a request, and it's going to be all of the parameters that Facebook sends back. So when you click on your Facebook link and you hit OK, then you're going to be sent back, and you're going to be sent back with all these parameters. Now, if you say, if user is persisted, which means that, in other words, if the user exists and we have a session, then we're going to say sign in and redirect, and then we're going to set a flash message. All of this is the kind of thing you've done before. You've been able to set flash messages, and here we're just signing in and redirecting that user. Here we're saying if that is not the case, then we're going to set the session with the Devise Facebook data, and we're going to set that equal to these items. Remember, this is exactly the request item right up here. And then we're going to redirect the user to a new user registration URL. So this is what has happened if there would be an error, or if for some reason they clicked that they wanted to sign in with Facebook and then change their mind. If there's any kind of failure, this failure message is something we're given that's inherited from here, and we're just overriding it, and we're saying if there's any failure, just redirect them to the home page, and that's it. If you have any questions on this, just feel free to message me afterwards. I know this is a lot of code, but really all we're doing is we're checking to see if the user is signed in or not, and if they are, then we're setting the parameters Facebook sends back. No questions, and we'll keep on going down the line. The next thing is we have some methods to set in the user model. Notice how we're almost done. That's pretty cool. So here we have our user model, and we have some things that we need to set inside of it. So I'm going to open up our user. We already said it's going to be omniauthable, but we have more that we have to do. So here, I'm going to fix this indentation. Let's see. Okay. So apparently where I pushed it up from had some things that were not set as spaces. And that's why you have these items. Okay, that looks better. Okay, so what we have here is we have two methods. Notice how, because I called self on both of them, both of these are class methods, so they can be called on the instance of the class directly, and if this looks familiar, it's because we already entered this in. So this from Omniauth right here, this is the same method that we're calling inside the Facebook controller. So here what we're doing is we're saying from Omniauth, we're passing in the authentication object, and then from there what we're doing is we're just calling where on that, and we're grabbing, using the key value syntax, we're grabbing the provider and the user. And then what we're doing here is we're saying first or create, which is just a thing inside of Active Record that says that if this user exists, then just grab the first one, and if
he doesn't exist, then create a user. So this is how if you've ever used any application where you can log in with Facebook or Twitter, this is how it knows to either create a new record or to simply return the one if you've already signed in with them before. Then from there, where takes a block, and it allows us to set all of those values. So here, notice how we added that name and that image before when we were adding the parameters to user. This allows us to be able to use it here. So whenever we are grabbing the email and the password, we're also grabbing the user's name and their image so that we can display that inside of the browser. So let me do that, and I believe this is all we need. So let me come back to home, and I'm at first going to just try to print this out. So I'm going to say if current user, and then inside of this, I just want to see the user object. So I'm going to say current user dot inspect, so I can see the user object that gets returned. So let me start up the Rails server. And we'll see if all that code works. Okay, so it says sign in with Facebook, and when I do that, it takes me to an error. It says the domain this URL isn't included in the app's domain. Okay, that's something that I need to update. So let's go back here. So what I need to do is set up a domain inside of this application. Here we go. So app domain localhost, and I'll add that to the README. So localhost 3000, hit save change. Let's see. Let's see why it's not working there. Let me take a quick look at one of my other apps I did with it and see how I have that one set up. Let's see, Bootcamp demo. Settings, there we go. Okay, so it's just a site URL, not the app URL. Click on Add Platform, go to Website, and now you can paste that in, and that should work. Okay, so let's try this out and give it another shot. Okay, so hit refresh there, click Sign in with Facebook, and now it says Classroom Demo will receive your public profile and email address, and then I can choose to accept this. So I'm going to hit Continue as Jordan. And then this should redirect me to the application, and there you go. It says successfully authenticated from Facebook account. And look, it gives me all of my details from Facebook. So if I wanted to update this, so if I wanted to do something like say, hey, and then grab my name, so then I could do current user dot name and put that inside of a div. And then here do something similar. Now let's do actually let's do an image tag here and pass in current user image. Let's see if I refresh. And there you go. You have my name. It says, hey, Jordan Hudgens. And then from there, it grabs my profile picture, which is the same. It's going to grab, you notice here, the same profile picture that you have on your Facebook account. And that is really it right there. So let's open up the Rails console really quick, just so you can see this. and I will scroll up because Curtis said you guys can't see the bottom of the screen. Type in user.last, and you can see, even though I didn't type in jordan@wow.com and I didn't type in anything else, by using this, it created the record in the database for me. It grabbed my user identification number, my name, and then it grabbed a URL, which is the image provided from Facebook. And Facebook, if you go through the Graph API, there's all kinds of things. We could grab my interests. You could grab really anything as long as I give you permission in order to get those. So that is, in a nutshell, a way that you can integrate Omniauth into your application, into a Rails application, and how you can use it to create records without the users having to type any of that information in, and then connecting that so you can use them with the session and everything like that. I will update the README to include the requirement to add the that URL for the site URL, because that's needed for one of Facebook's requirements. But that's pretty much about it. Are there any questions on that whatsoever? Yeah, if you don't have Facebook, then you can use all kinds of other things. Obviously, I integrated Devise, so you could have a link to just do a regular login and registration. And then that's why I personally like to do both. I've seen a few apps actually require you to have some type of social networking application, but if you're like Curtis and you deleted your Facebook, like I would love to do if it were possible. I have way too many things connected to it. But yeah, in that case, you always want to give an application the ability to have both. That's why I showed you a system where we integrated Devise plus Omniauth. But that's a very good reason, because even though it may seem like everyone has Facebook, really not everyone does. Okay, cool. Well, let me know if you have any questions. If you've never used it before and it's something you want to integrate into your applications, I highly recommend going through that demo. I will edit this video and shoot it over to you so you can have access to it, and then I'll update the README. So you guys will be good to go, and you'll have a reference anytime you want to add Omniauth to your applications in the future. Okay, you guys have a good one. I will talk with everyone soon. Everyone soon. Everyone soon. Everyone soon.